Hey everybody, I hope you're having an awesome day today. In today's video, we're going to be talking about how to find inspiration. But first, you're going to notice that I'm holding my mic. A few of you commented that my mic comes in a little soft, so I've ordered a new one. But in the interim, this is going to be my little makeshift fix. Got to go with the flow. So I'm so excited to jump into how I find inspiration, what inspires me for my work, and how I put that into my final paintings. So, the first step to finding inspiration is to get off of your phone. A lot of people won't agree with me on this, but this is what works for me. Being away from the internet is the best way to be inspired, even if you're having a creative block. Looking at things in other fields outside of the visual field, if you're a visual artist like myself, is the best way to kind of get your brain going and thinking about things differently. A great example is I was on a walk the other day in my neighborhood and someone had their plants really beautifully sculpted, and so I started to jot those sculptures down in my sketchbook. And these forms, I don't know what they'll turn into for their final piece, but I really love how the asymmetry and the imbalance of those plants spoke to me. So I decided to put it down in my sketchbook and then save it for a painting in the future. And getting off of your phone will allow your eyes to kind of look upward and look outward and find things that you may not have noticed otherwise if you were just scrolling on Instagram. The second thing that I love doing outside of going outside and sketching is to make smaller studies. If I have an idea and I'm not too sure it's going to work out quite the way that my mind is envisioning it, I love to make smaller versions. So these folded pieces of paper are hand painted acrylic on paper. And whenever I get anxious, I tend to fold paper or fidget with my hands. So that's really what inspired this series. But before I started making larger, more detailed works like this, I decided to make a little smaller study just to see if what I was inspired by translated to a final painting. So, outside of sketching in my sketchbook, I also love to kind of do a little quick study and get that thought or get that, half fleshed out idea down on paper itself. The third thing I love to do is also write small notes for myself. So these sketches were from a little bit earlier in the year, and writing down things like having shapes reflect or having each portion of a figure or a form be a different color just reminds me that even if I pick up the sketchbook in a few years, that's kind of where my mind was going, and then I could build off of that for a final painting, or I could decide to kind of re-put it together all together with a new idea. So I always like to leave myself little notes because my memory is not the best. So putting down sketches, playing with studies, and writing notes for my future self are all great ways to just kind of get something down on paper when I'm out and about. The fourth thing is to not go out with the intention of looking for inspiration. I feel like that puts a lot of pressure on yourself. So if you're going like, I'm going to go for a walk and find inspiration, or I'm going to go to a thrift store and find inspiration, or I'm going to find something and then make something from what I find, that could be a lot of pressure when you're making work. So I just love to add different things to my daily routine that will hopefully give me some inspiration. So going on a walk in the morning, going on a walk in the afternoon, meditating, reading, and then throughout the year I try to go to different national parks in the United States just to be in nature. And that's my biggest inspiration is nature and the forms and the color palettes that nature provides. Whatever that is for you, try to incorporate small amounts into your every single day. And then that way you're not worried about having to go find something and go be inspired by something. A great example of that is I was in a thrift shop with my parents and my husband, and I found these really beautiful vintage postcards of different parks somewhere in the United States. I believe this one is Yellowstone. Yes, it is. It's a geyser in Yellowstone. Some are in different countries. Here's another one. And I really love the idea of painting my abstract forms onto these postcards. And I've definitely played with collage in the past years ago, probably a decade ago at this point. And I've also been playing with AI, kind of taking my painted forms and putting them in a surreal landscape. And all of those different small pieces that I've been playing with added up to me putting these paintings on these postcards. So just happened to take a daily habit of, going into different vintage shops and just being inspired by things made in the past. And it ended up coming up with something really beautiful and an evolution of the work that I've already made. So definitely don't put pressure on yourself to go out and find inspiration. Just give yourself time away from the screen, away from the phone, to naturally be around things that may inspire you. And my fifth and last bit of advice when it comes to finding inspiration is to slow down in your practice. Remember, there's just, especially when reels and stories and all this video content started to come out on different social platforms, I felt pressure to film everything and put everything out immediately so people can see what I'm doing in real time. And that really made the inspiration process a lot more difficult. So I'd find inspiration, make it, and put the piece out there. And even though that was nice for iteration and evolving, sometimes I didn't let the inspiration sit with me long enough. So, a good example of how I've kind of pivoted from that is sometimes these paintings. So, this is a in progress folded piece of painting. And this painting sometimes will take me weeks to make, even though it's 9 by 12. I have a few of them. And slowing down and repeating that same inspiration from piece to piece has allowed me to evolve and iterate on it in a way that feels more meaningful. So sometimes when I am inspired by something, if I go out and, I found those plants that inspired my sketches, sometimes I let it sit in my sketchbook for a while and then I make a study and then I let that sit and I really let that inspiration kind of mull over in my mind. And then eventually it'll come to something that feels like a piece that is well thought out. And when someone looks at it, they'll see that. They'll see that time that you took making the piece and then coming up with the idea for the piece in the painting itself. And I think that's a really beautiful thing. So, overall, from making sketches to making studies to carving out small periods of your day to just be outside and away from your screen and then naturally stumble upon inspiration, to slowing down in your practice and really letting that inspiration seep in to the work that you're making and to the ideas that you're formulating from that inspiration. That's how I go about taking what inspires me, which is nature in its forms and its colors, and putting it into my work in a way that feels authentically like me. So I'd love to hear how you find inspiration, what inspires you, and how you get yourself into a groove, taking something from the outside world, internalizing it, and then putting it back out there in your own way. So definitely leave me a comment and let me know how you are inspired. Hopefully, this helps you.